A much better saying would be that money cannot guarantee happiness. This study especially suggests that you can be quite well off and yet very miserable. So as you can see, this refers to income, what is to happiness. We will get back to this study though. But basically, money is not the best predictor for happiness, and this is especially suggested by this study, which is supposedly the longest running study on happiness. And I could not find the original scientific paper, but it's referenced by many articles, videos, and even has a full book about it, so it's probably real. And it basically concludes that the greatest predictor for happiness are human connections. Having said all that, and we're looking at the bird's eye view in a lot of the literature, and by the way, you can call me lazy for using ChatGPT, but I think it's just more efficient when trying to look for like large sample sizes of data. And also I did check a lot of its findings, and it did pretty much align with what its summaries were. Although as you can see, some are behind paywalls, so I couldn't really check them. But you can see the general conclusion. And all of that stuff, including information I found outside of this video, leads towards four main conclusions. So firstly, money is important to reduce money-induced stress and anxiety, and this includes more than just being in poverty, but also any kind of large expenses and risks suggested by especially this section of the study, which actually, when you think about it, makes perfect sense. Like, obviously, if you have a very limited budget, and then you have to spend a lot of money on like any kind of again large expenses, medical expenses, or well, any actual like risky endeavors. And maybe you want to move out or change your house, maybe you want to start a business. Whatever it is that you're doing, as long as it's a risky or an expensive endeavor, like having more money and not having to calculate all of the expenses associated with it, would likely either remove or at least reduce the worries that it would have otherwise caused. And even if in theory it's only, again, decreases the negative emotions, in practice, it does like lead you towards a happier life, because you see, and it's not just even about the ratio between happiness and unhappiness, but more importantly, it's about the time you have spent like thinking about this. It now could be relocated to like other things which presumably would actually make you happy. And that ties into the second point, is also supported by like this specific study, but it can also just be summarized as, unless you're miserable because of things unrelated to it, more money will improve your happiness. And what I mentioned previously just might be one of the reasons, even if only a minor one. So as you can see, unless you're part of this most miserable 15%, having more money has a huge impact on your overall well-being. Now, there's a few things I need to mention here. So this specific study exists to solve an odd disagreement between two parties getting different results in their specific studies, and I won't get into too much detail on this because I don't think it's overly relevant, but like, there's a specific study which suggests, and you might have heard of it, that happiness essentially stops rising into the $75,000 range, and if not, then you probably will hear of the study, because it's essentially in complete disagreement with some of the things they're mentioning here, and also like the results of this like later study. But this one exists again to solve the problem that it had, because you see, its maximum score basically fails to account for happiness going beyond it, at least based on my understanding. And it's a bit more complicated, but it's essentially like the full point. And this is especially relevant as it ties into another study which found basically the exact same thing, although in their case globally. And the problem there is that they actually ask people on a scale of 1 to 10 how happy they feel. And like, this might not seem immediately to be a problem in fact at all, but in truth there's several issues. So firstly, human memory and frankly brains are unobjective and unreliable, and they might even be aware of how much happier they are on average compared to like people with similar scores who earn less money. And secondly, they might have high expectations for life and specifically the happiness. And thirdly, they might understate how happy they feel. And fourthly, this will be the exact same issue that the other study had with the $75,000 cap, which is that the happiness ceiling basically isn't high enough. So past a certain point of happiness, everyone rates themselves as either 8 or 9, with nobody actually thinking that they live the perfect life and therefore not rating themselves as a 10. And maybe if you extended it to 1,000, 10,000, or even like a 100, you might see significantly higher variety. And this is supported by the newest study, the one that I talked about before, although I talked about several studies, but you can see it on the screen. And it essentially suggests that, and again, the methodology was significantly more reliable, asking people several times per day how they actually felt in a given moment, which obviously solves several of the problems of the other study and makes it significantly more reliable, although there's more reasons than just that why I think it's accurate. Speaking of which, money may be necessary to fulfill whatever dreams you have that actually would make you happy, and if we conclude that there are different happiness factors, which essentially just refers to these dreams, and that actually they do make you happy, and that at least some of them require money. This is whatever, like living in your dream house, traveling around the world, or whatever it is that you want to be doing. Having more money will allow you to fulfill more of them, presumably, since they do lead towards more happiness, will allow you to be overall more happy, meaning that more money does lead you towards a happier life, as long as you actually fulfill these happiness factors. And so in a way, it's not holding of money, but instead it's the use of money that actually makes you more happy. But let's say you're part of the demographic that would actually be less happy because of having more money. Let's say maybe you liked working, but for whatever reason now it just feels pointless because again you don't really need that money. But the thing is that if you have too much money, you can just simply throw it away. Or you can just give it to anybody. you can give it to me. Look, I'll take that burden from you if you really don't want that. But the reverse isn't so simple. You see, one of the positives of having a lot of money is that it allows you to work when you want, how you want, and if you want. And look, I understand there might be some psychological factors against it, but to be honest, if you're like part of the relatively smart and self-aware demographic, then this probably shouldn't be a problem. Like, this doesn't really apply to you. So in conclusion, if you're in poverty, money does make you happier. Past that point, fixing your issues becomes a necessity first. And also finding happiness factors, because who knows, maybe for you, fulfilling most of them doesn't really require that much money. That of course is if you pass the point of poverty, which these days is earning less than 6 figures.